So very recently, the president of the UAE was hailing family-friendly businesses. But how seriously are companies actually leaning in to helping working parents, but also, interestingly, mothers coming back from maternity leave? Well, my guest today on the Mental Space podcast live here at the Wellbeing at Work Summit in Dubai is none other than Lamisse Muhtaseb, who is the HR director and People, Inclusion and Purpose Lead.
Nearly. Purpose, Culture and Inclusion Lead.
For Deloitte Middle East. And the reason why I wanted to talk to you today is because you were telling me about an amazing project called Returnity.
Yes.
Which, and sometimes we hear a lot, and we talk a lot, rightly so, about mental health for Gen Zs coming through. But we don't really talk an awful lot about the mental health of mothers in general. In particular, mothers coming back from maternity. So what was the inspiration for Returnity? Tell our audience a little bit about it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, first of all, Scott, thank you for having me on your podcast. I always enjoy having conversations with you. And this one is one very, very dear, very close to my heart. And I'm really grateful we're talking about it. I'm also really grateful I work in a place where we can deliver these kind of things and be able to talk about the difference that we're making with a program like Returnity. So, I think we generally understand that for working parents, especially working mothers, there are many challenges to committing to both, to committing to career, to committing to ambition, but also meeting those commitments at home. And, if you think about some of the questions that women especially sometimes are presented with, for example, when they get married, it's, do you think you'll continue working? Yeah. Whereas, gentlemen don't often need to quit their job because they've fallen in love, so it's very much, yeah. So I think, there are some questions that are generally asked to women, which really gives the indication that you have to be able to do one or the other. You cannot necessarily marry up the two. You can't necessarily have a career plus do all the things that you want to do at home. Did you want to say something?
No, it just strikes me as, it's 2024.
Yeah.
You said it's 2023, but it's 2024. And we're still having this conversation about whether it's possible for a woman to have a career and a family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at Deloitte, we always said, we need to be able to, we've always talked about foster inclusion and lead the way and serve with integrity. And they're our core values. And you have to really walk the talk as well, So someone earlier on today in the summit was talking about building trust within the organisation, and that is absolutely about what you're saying and what you're doing are aligned. And if we're talking about taking care of each other, we have to talk about working parents. We have to, and we have to be very intentional with what we do for working parents. And we see it. People are leaving. Women are leaving. They are often having to make a choice between career and family. And I think it was really about looking into that a little bit further around what are those traditional structures in the corporate world that are a hindrance and an obstacle to women being able to do both, all parents, but women especially. And that was the inspiration around, well, we are all about change. We are all about leading the way, and we do that. We've done that on many, many fronts. So, what are the simple changes we can make? And that was the inspiration behind, putting a program together around transitioning women back into the workplace, whether they're already employed and they're transitioning back after leave, or whether they're transitioning because they really didn't have that choice to continue working after they started a family.
I mean, I love the name.
Yes.
But tell me about Returnity then.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Returnity is a program designed for women, but not only for women. So it's really about supporting parents who have taken time off to start a family, transitioning back into the workplace. And I think previously and traditionally, when people take maternity leave or paternity leave, is come back to work and pick up where you left off. And in a lot of professional services firms, that includes long hours, that does include travel, that includes, really living with your clients. But that doesn't always work for returning parents. While the business is continuing doing what it's doing, life has changed for these individuals. So it was about creating a program where women, especially returning parents, mothers, can design a return program. And the program itself is a 16-week transition program around what does this mean? Do you need wellbeing counselling? Do you need some support? Do you need to not travel for a little while? What does the world need to look like for you to be able to, continue your career, continue your ambitions, take care of your family, and so on? And it was really centred around making sure that these parents are taken care of. It was really centred around well-being. We did have to do a few interviews with returning mums who had come back from multiple maternity leaves to say, how was your experience? Tell us a little bit about that. We had to do a little bit of research because these sort of interventions need to be simple but effective. Like many well-being interventions, they need to be simple yet effective. And that's really what the program is. It's you've got a menu of support, and you can pick from that menu around designing a return plan. And after the 16-week transition, it's then, hopefully then, you can carry on. You're quite clear on what you want to do. The business is also quite clear on how that can look.
Because sometimes he feels, look, and I've been there as well, I think parents are sometimes not even prepared for how they are going to feel about working after, the birth of their child. I remember I was working for a strategic consultancy, and I was flying to Saudi a lot. Yeah. I was sat on that flight in tears. There would be a family there, and they'd be watching a sort of Disney movie, and the little girl would be there, and I'd be in tears because I was away from my kids. What have you changed then to allow parents? Because, again, to be able to say that, how comfortable is it to turn around to your leader and go, and I was lucky, I had a line manager, Stevie, he was always, his phrase was family first. Yeah. But the nervousness to turn around to your boss, your leader, and go, really struggling. I didn't know I was going to struggle. I thought, and I'm the man coming back. Do you know what I mean? Like coming back after the birth of my child, going, really, I'm all at sea with this. So how have you changed?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. The mindset and the preconceptions around, when I've been on 2 maternity leaves and I came back and it was, I didn't know I had choices, and I didn't know that I had options, and I didn't know how to ask for that. I suffered my own mental health after my first child, and that's what made it very real for me as well around mental health, and I just thought, well, how do we talk about this? Like, are we talking about this? Anyone talking about this? And I was also very lucky. I had a fantastic manager, and we were able to talk very openly. And he said, tell me what you need. And I said, well, I didn't realize I didn't realize that was a conversation I was going to have, and it was wonderful. But what it's done, and I'm really glad you've asked that, is actually we piloted it because we thought we need to really get a sense check for how this is going to land. And so we asked a couple of women, one of them, and we wanted them, again, to have multiple maternity leaves, to have a reference point, to have something to compare it to. And one of our pilot, and to help enhance the program, we obviously wanted to fine-tune it depending on what their experience was going to be like. As we designed the return plan, there was this point where we had to communicate it to the senior leader. She was a senior lady in the business. And we had to say, so-and-so, our employee is coming back from maternity leave in a month. So we check in before they return, before they even go on leave, and then before they return. And this is what she wants the return plan to be like for the first 4 weeks, and then the following 2 weeks, and the following whatever for these 16 weeks. And then hopefully by then we've got a bit more clarity. And they were so pleased. They said, well, this is great because now we know what to expect. Now we know how to manage her time, where to, what to ask her to do and how to assign some responsibilities. Yeah. So it landed really well. We were actually like, okay, so there is actually buy-in. There is there. We didn't face the resistance that perhaps we were expecting. Well, what do you mean she can't travel? What do you mean?
We don't even talk about it, do we? You can see the perspective. Sometimes managers are like, well, I don't know, how do I broach this subject? Yeah. How do, because managers haven't been given the tools in which to have that kind of open dialogue. Am I going to go too far? Am I not going to say enough? How am I going to support?
No, it was so well received by the leaders. It was really well received because I think they had the clarity on what the needs of their individuals, what the needs of their team members were. Yeah. So they were able to manage their own expectations it was a really good arrangement. And then we kept checking in with her, saying, right, how's the experience? Has anything changed? Because we don't assume those 16 weeks are going to look the same either. Yeah. And the thing she said was that she feels so much more supported. And it was very simple conversations we were having. So it was very positive. And now it's very much about making it mandatory.
Yeah.
It's really about, we want everyone's experience to be very consistent. So it's not that, there's some take on for this and others opt out. It's mandatory and up to the returnee to think about how that needs to look for them.
We often hope that leaderships and all these companies would get this here. They would feel emotionally that it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But often we have to make the argument here. What does this mean for the bottom line? What does this mean in terms of ROI? And in a professional services company, I'm sure you've had to make that case as well. What was the case for the ROI of this thing?
Yeah. Oh, I like this question. With many of the initiatives and the programs that we work on, and we've got plenty of really great signature programs around wellbeing, D&I, and I take care of many of them. I'm lucky enough to be able to be involved. There's always a really simple question that we ask ourselves. But especially I ask myself with my team, some of them are with me today, what's the impact if we don't do it? What if we didn't do this? What if we didn't have an EAP? What if we didn't have a returnship program? What if we didn't, take care of each other in many, many ways? What if we didn't have those family-friendly policies? Is that the identity of our business? Are we happy with what that looks like? Are we happy with what that means for our people? And that's our starting point. That's our starting point around, is it the impact that we're trying to make? What if we didn't do it? What if we didn't have it? And then you kind of understand the business case from there by picturing your world without it a little bit, But then you do have to measure the impact. You absolutely do with any of these programs because you want to know what you need to continue to enhance in your business and what you're trying to achieve. And so, you obviously have to have that open engagement and you have to have those employee surveys and you have to have those touch points throughout. It is about momentum and the momentum of the communication, the assessment of the viability of your programs and the initiatives that you have. And that's your measurement. And your return on investment is absolutely that. It's something that has been talked about a lot around your engagement of your people, your productivity, the motivation that people have, their engagement, their well-being. And if their well-being is taken care of, then, I think we know the economic impact of taking care of employees' well-being.
Let's just stay with families as well for a bit, because we are faced with parental guilt. So it's not easy for parents sometimes to come back. At the same time, we've got the president of the UAE turning around and saying companies that support families actually make money. It's good for society, it's good economically. What's your view of that protection for families, for the benefits of family-friendly policies and why they are so important? Why are families so important to be part of the demographic of any workforce? Because you could just employ 20-year-old single people that have got no responsibilities, and they might be cheaper, they don't come with school fees, they don't come with as many health insurance companies. What is the ROI of employing families?
Of employing families,
Family people.
Family people,
Parents.
Absolutely.
Parents, that's what we call it.
Yeah, those. First one, I'm going to address one point that you mentioned earlier around parental guilt. And there is a real assumption that, as working parents and as working mothers, that we do have some guilt. I think I'm one of a few who doesn't. I don't really feel guilt that I work. I think it's really important. And I think it's something that's really important for my daughters to see as well, that, that they can have their autonomy, they can have ambition and they can work and all of these things are just as important. And every day priorities change. Sometimes it's work, sometimes it's family. Sometimes it doesn't feel good to be on that plane. It doesn't feel good to leave your family. It doesn't feel good that you're missing a birthday or something like that if that's what you're doing. But I don't know if it's guilt. I think it's just about managing priorities and reconciling that in your mind around, am I where I'm supposed to be today?
So,
and I will get to your point about
I just want to stay with that. But is that perhaps one of the benefits of working within a flexible organisation that actually does prioritise parents and does, give that flexibility because you feel you have some more control over your ability to dial in?
Absolutely.
You really need to. There will be times when it is at the hospital appointment or it's the graduation or it's the school play. and if the organization has the flexibility to allow you to lean into that, then it perhaps doesn't feel so bad when there are those times when you have to be away. Whereas we do have parents that, I know guys, that they see their children for half an hour in the morning and half an hour at night.
Yeah. They visit them. They visit them in bed, don't they?
That's it. And they are, and I think we have a generation now where we're acutely aware as parents of, but my children do need my time. And I actually now have realised that I want my children's time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I mean, I think there's been such a shift in the way that many companies are approaching their policies in terms of flexible working, in terms of making this, people talk about work-life balance, and I've always opposed that term because I don't believe they're exclusive. So I believe that work is part of life. And that's just so important. If your company understands that too, the firm you're working for also understands that this is part of your ecosystem. Yeah. This is part of your personal ecosystem around how you're feeling, what's important to you, your purpose, your values. It's family, it's work, it's your environment, it's your exercise, it's your social interactions. It's part of it. And if you have that flexibility, and you're absolutely right, I'm very lucky I work in a company that absolutely does. And then there is a much easier way of managing those commitments, and being able to be with your family and not having the guilt of. And I know many parents who have ultimately had to make the choice of do I work or do I parent? It's been very hard for them. And I was actually at a women's networking thing. We were speaking to some women entrepreneurs. And a couple of them said, I don't think you realize that I didn't have a choice but to be an entrepreneur. I couldn't be employed. I didn't have flexibility. I had to be in the office 5 days a week. I didn't have a choice but to do my own thing. And they're highly skilled, highly experienced, but there was no accommodation for them at their workplace.
And perhaps that then dovetails back to answering that question as well about that ROI, or as you say, what happens when you don't have that policy? Because the ROI being the reward, but also the risk of not having that family-friendly policy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's back to the economic impact. It really is about well-being. It really is about how people feel, and what they're feeling affects how they're thinking, affects how they're behaving, and it drives their decision-making. If they feel they're not supported, if they feel they're not engaged, if they feel that they're not able to manage their commitments and the things that are important to them, you've lost them.
There's an interesting debate as well when we talk about like the economics inside of organizations, because I do see, I've seen companies go, well, yeah, but families are expensive because we have to pay for school fees and we have to do this. But there are so many other sort of perspectives that come with being a parent. And often if you're a parent, you might have that more experience. It's almost like to steel man it again. It's that, well, what happens if we don't have parents? What kind of experience and perspectives do we have inside of the business?
You don't have diversity. You don't have generational diversity. You don't have diversity in thinking and perspectives. You don't have diversity. And again, ask yourself the question, what if we don't have it? What if we have one perspective?
Steel man the problem. What's the best case we could make doing without all of this?
Yeah, I think it really are just very simple. Like I said, one of our core values, taking care of each other, seems very straightforward. We just take care of each other. It's not always that easy, though, because there's no one size fits all, and it's incredibly dynamic. And the demands of the business and the demands of those different generations vary so much. And you will find, like you said, young people who are not committed to family yet or anything like that will say, well, there's so many more benefits. Someone who has a family gets all of these benefits. These policies don't apply to me. These educational things, I'm not getting extra allowances, I'm not getting extra benefits, so they feel disadvantaged. It's not the case at all. So it is that dynamic, and businesses have to be able to adapt to the diversity that they have. They have to have the policies in place for the diversity that they're attracting as well.
We've heard a lot this morning from some amazing speakers, and one of the things that kind of came out a lot was that this is now a business imperative. And actually, if you want to succeed moving forward as a business, you have to embrace well-being, you have to embrace diversity. What's your perspective on that?
Oh, well, I agree with that. I absolutely agree with it. I think the companies who are not making the effort to mature in their efforts around D&I and well-being and so on could potentially be left behind. I think they will fall behind. With any of these efforts, with well-being, with D&I, you look at the maturity model around what is your ultimate goal to really do this. You know, some of the well-being things that we've heard about today are around, you know, the step challenges. I think someone talked about, you know, the step challenges and going off to do yoga and having a disconnect day and doing, you know, all of these great things. And I think that's fantastic. But there are also moments in time. And then you've got the education, the awareness, the workshops. Scott, we've had you and you've spoken to a lot of our people about men's mental health, and we've had multiple others. And do those awareness sessions and talk about it and create safe spaces to talk about that. And we have linked that in. I think someone at the summit earlier was even talking about there's a well-being element to diversity. There's a well-being element to disability, neurodivergence, and so on. And there's you can put well-being in anything and it works. So I think, you know, ultimately you've got your moment in time events, you've got your education and so on, but how do you make it part of how you do business? Yeah. Well-being, D&I, inclusion. Actually, at Deloitte, well-being is part of inclusion. You can't have an inclusive environment, and you can't foster that environment without talking about well-being.
Because it does seem sometimes as well, I am talking my own book here, but in that we treat them all as different tracks.
No, yeah.
We treat the moments in time. Like we've done 10 different moments in time, so we're covered.
Yeah.
But there's no thread for all of them.
Correct.
There's no strategy. They're literally drops, and they'll ripple for a bit, and then they disappear.
Yeah.
How do you feel companies can actually make sure that all of their activities are actually trained up? They're all part of one big strategy. They can be sub-strategies. Where's the big strategy?
I mean, all of these moment in time events are really important as well. I mean, I think one of the questions that we were asked today was what energized you today? And you know, there was a show of hands for coffee. And I actually said it was because I was with my team who live we work remotely a lot of the time, so we don't get to connect often. But actually, it was being with my team, it was the people. That's what energized me today. So there's a lot to be said really about, you know, connecting for those moments, I think, and being together, and really just understanding what we value the most, really what our culture is and what we value the most, and being able to drive that forward.
Now, there's a question we always ask on our podcast, which is, what does mental health mean to you? What's your definition of mental health?
Yeah, well, that's a nice one. What's my definition of mental health? I don't know. I always associate mental health with quality of life. You know, and it's not what is mental health, it is how do we manage mental health as well, what do we do with it, because I think we can understand it. And sometimes they're those non-tangibles, aren't they? But I think it's what I come back to before, which is everything that influences it in the ecosystem around mental health. And it's, you know, by definition, what is it? It's like psychological, mental, emotional well-being is what your mental health is. Something. Do we have everything we need? But it's, on a very personal level, mental health, now for me, is part of who I am. It is just understanding yourself and understanding part of everyone is their mental health. You know, and understanding what influences it. Understanding that no 2 days made it the same. And for people who do go through mental health and mental illnesses, I would say, and it's something that I kind of learned along the way as well, which is this is not something that is going to come and go necessarily. This isn't something separate to who you are. Actually, it is part of who you are. And whether you've had a mental illness or not, there is mental health as part of who you are. And I think there's a lot to be said around just understanding what influences your mental health and what your triggers are. So I think it's deeply personal around, you know, around the things that you care about, around the things that, you know, whether it's the societal, the society and the environment in which you're existing in, you know, your emotional state. So that's what mental health is to me. It's quality of life and part of who I am.
So I'm going to ask you the second question I always ask
go on.
podcast, which is, I've dragged it on stage.
Yeah.
There are people sitting in listening to this conversation. Yeah. How is your mental health today?
Oh, well, God bless this mess, I think, is how... God bless this mess. There are some days where it's...
feels like either a T-shirt or a hashtag.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it can vary throughout the day, but I mean, like I said, I've had a really great boost of energy being with people. I've enjoyed the conversation today. So I think if you had asked me at 7:30 this morning when I was trying to get my kids out the door, one of them dressed like a caveman, and just trying to deal with all the demands from the school, my mental health. It was caveman day.
Okay, great.
And all I could think about was the Flintstones, but I didn't have a Flintstone costume. So anyway, if you had asked me this morning at about 7:30, it would be very different to how it is now. But my mental health today is in pretty good shape.
Great. You've been very generous with your time.
How is yours, Scott?
I think it's okay.
Okay.
I think I need to stop and go, hello, what's going on? Because it's a busy day, stage all day, so it can be...
Have you got that scheduled in? The stop and what's going on?
Yeah,
good.
5:30 tonight, but I won't say the
Okay.
We've had some brilliant speakers here this morning, actually. I've been so impressed with some of the insights, and some of them have been really, really powerful, human stories. Give me 3 takeaways, if I can ask, that you have heard. Either perhaps you go, I wasn't expecting to hear that, or that you thought was super important that reconfirmed something you knew.
Yeah, there was one talk especially that I heard today, which I want to connect further on and delve. It's just really around how everything is so connected. It was about nutrition. It was about lifestyle. So the simple choices. It was about really educating ourselves on our personal choices and what we're doing to ourselves, what we're doing with our families, what's in our kitchen cupboards, what's in our fridge, all of those things, and the impact of that on our mental health. I think that's always kind of been something that I'm very aware of, but I don't think I'm educated enough on it. And I think that was a big takeaway for me on a very personal level. And then as I was thinking about that, I thought, how do I bring that into the corporate world? And I think I'd like to explore that a little bit.
There's two things that for me as well. It's like nutrition and sleep. Yeah. And we don't often hear companies talking about nutrition, sleep.
No.
Like we'll talk about physical health and steps.
Correct.
And we might do some mental health. Mental health, is a meditation or yoga. Great, but moments of time as you call it. Yeah, but nutrition and sleep are not something that we see many get prioritized in strategy.
Absolutely, and I don't think there are many companies here who have little sleep pods for us to go and have a little power nap in.
And even if they did, would they have created the culture in which someone felt, do you know what, I am just going to have a 10-minute nap over there?
No, yeah, I know, I think...
I had sleep pods here today.
I know.
It would be my time to disconnect.
Exactly. I think that would be a real game changer if that happened in the region. And I don't know. Again, you don't know where this mindset could take us. We don't know how it's evolving. But we know more and more that the intangible values are just as important. They're just as important as anything else. But I think there were some great takeaways today. There's some really great discussions. But, there are many on a very personal level and many kind of really in the corporate world around what are those best practices and how they're being measured. And one of the biggest things as well, which is so important for us, is where's the accountability? Yeah. There has to be the accountability around it. And that's why, we look at that maturity model in terms of it has to be part of how we do business, not something we can opt in and out of. It has to be.
If the accountability is not there, then there's no way to know what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Podcast. No, it's been a great conversation, and congratulations on returns.
Thank you.
I think it's an amazing
project, it's a good one.
Initiative. If you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, please remember that you can subscribe and catch all of our conversations. If you watch it on YouTube, the button's just there. Press it. Subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, any podcasting platform you want. Once again, Lamisse, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me.